and welcome to Atheism in History, a week-by-week look at events, personages in the history of atheism and free thought. I'm John Rafferty, president of the Secular Humanist Society of New York, and an active member of New York City Atheists, who are the producers and sponsors of this program. We look at the week-by-week history of atheism and free thought, and let's begin with somebody from a couple of hundred years ago. Faith and knowledge, he said, are related as the two scales of balance. When the one goes up, the other goes down. The power of religious dogma, when inculcated early, is such as to stifle conscience, compassion, and finally every feeling of humanity. For as you know, religions are like glowworms. They shine only when it's dark. A certain amount of ignorance is the condition of all religions, the element in which alone they can exist. Those are the words of Arthur Schopenhauer, who was born February 22nd in 1788. And became one of the most influential philosophers of the 19th century. He was an atheist all his life, rejected the ideas of Hegel about the existence of God, and was very much influenced in his writings and his thinking by Buddhism. He was a loner, a pessimist, not a very happy individual. But he advocated the alleviation of suffering through an appreciation of aesthetics, altruism, and asceticism, almost Zen-like. He died in 1860, and his influence has been felt around the world. Famous birthday of February 22nd is someone we discussed last week, George Washington. Let's just review for a moment, because this is actually his birthday week. George Washington was not an atheist, but he was certainly a free thinker, a deist, a Mason, and of course one of the most important personages in the history of the United States of America. He was not a practicing Christian. However much the religious right has tried to make him one in the 200 plus years since his death, that revisionism began almost the moment he died, when certain relatives of his and biographers who were literally looking to make a fast buck claimed that he was a practicing and devout Christian. Never true. He went to church to please his wife, and because it was the expected duty of a Virginia gentleman in those days, but he never, the key element of the various Protestant services at the time was the taking of communion. He never hung around during the services for communion. He never knelt in church or in the snow at Valley Forge, a story made up by the infamous Parson Weems, the same idiot who made up the story of little George Washington and the hatchet and the cherry tree. All a myth. Nor did George Washington say, as a friend of mine believed until yesterday when I was talking to him, that Washington added the words, "So help me God," to the presidential oath of office. He did not. Washington died a deist and a rationalist. In the hour before he died, he was still taking his pulse to see how his death was progressing. He had no fear of death, no fear of God. He was a rationalist and a free thinker. George Washington, father of the country, and a free thinker, no question. All the way into the 20th century, let's look at someone else. Linus Pauling was born on February 28th in, 1901. Pauling is the only person to ever have received 2 Nobel Prizes all by himself. Unshared Nobel Prize. He won the prize in chemistry in 1954 and peace in 1962. In those 8 years in between then, Linus Pauling had a hard time in the United States because he was an instant celebrity for winning the Nobel Prize in chemistry, but then he made his political and social ideas public, and Linus Pauling in the 1950s committed the unpardonable sin of advocating disarmament and peace and reconciliation between the United States and the Soviet Union. He was not an idiot who thought that the Soviets were good guys and that we should all just get along. But what he did advocate was working towards peaceful reconciliation, treaties that would eventually get rid of atomic weapons, and which he predicted would poison the Earth's atmosphere, and the very Earth itself. Of course, history has vindicated Pauling, but he had a long, difficult time with the jingoists and the right wing in the United States who considered him a traitor for advocating disarmament. He's considered the founding father of molecular biology, but his research was interdisciplinary, including human physiology and health. If you take large doses of vitamin C for health, you can trace that right back to Linus Pauling. He was the man who suggested it and promoted it. The only sane policy for the world, he wrote, is that of abolishing war. He said that in accepting the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1962. He was named Humanist of the Year by the American Humanist Association in 1961, and although technically not an atheist, he was an unorthodox and outspoken scientist who was a Unitarian for many years. Sometimes said, he wrote, that science has nothing to do with morality. This is wrong. Science is the search for truth, the effort to understand the world. It involves the rejection of bias, of dogma, of revelation, but not the rejection of morality. Linus Pauling, born February 28th in 1901, who lived till 1994, a long and useful life. On February 27th in 1936, Sonia Johnson was born. A fifth-generation Mormon in Mallet, Idaho. You probably have not heard of Sonia Johnson. I never had until I started researching this week in atheism. She graduated from Utah State University, got her MA and ED from Rutgers, and after marrying and through many moves and pregnancies. She taught English at various universities, both in the United States and overseas, and when her family returned to the United States in 1976, she bought a house in Virginia, one of the states that had not recognized the Equal Rights Amendment. Sonia Johnson had become a fervent supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. Such an ardent supporter that she was excommunicated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1979, the same organization that just worked and donated to kill Proposition 8 in California. The Mormon Church, as you certainly are aware, I'm sure, believes that women essentially are second-class citizens. Let's see, polygamy works one way. Men can have lots of wives. A woman who takes a second husband would be called, what's the word, begins with a W-H? I think you know. But at any rate, Sonia then fought back. She exposed the role of the wealthy Mormon Church in sabotaging passage of the ERA, and she went on a 37-day hunger strike in the Illinois State House in 1982 during the last days of the ERA countdown to symbolize how women hunger for justice. She ran on a feminist ticket for President of the United States in 1984, and she became the first third-party candidate to qualify for primary matching funds, so she didn't do too badly. In countless speeches, she pointed out, nobody's ever fought a revolution for women. She wrote of her experiences From Housewife to Heretic, and when a reporter from the Atlanta Constitution asked if Sonia had acquired any non-Mormon habits, she said, he was alluding, I'm sure, to smoking and drinking, but she replied, yes, I have picked up one non-Mormon habit. I have acquired the habit of free thought, quote unquote. In a 1982 speech before the Freedom for Religion Foundation, which, by the way, is the organization which I use in a great deal in the research for these various little talks. So in a speech to the Freedom from Religion Foundation in 1982, Sonia Johnson said, I have to admit that one of my favorite fantasies is that next Sunday not one single woman in any country of the world will go to church. If women simply stop giving our time and energy to the institutions that oppress, they would have to cease to do so. Women of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your apron strings. One day earlier on the calendar, on February 27th, in 1902, John Steinbeck was born in Salinas, California. His long list of humanist novels, include the 20th century classics of Mice and Men and The Grapes of Wrath, which won a Pulitzer Prize in 1939. He also wrote To a God Unknown, The Red Pony, East of Eden, and The Winter of Our Discontent. Near the end of his life, he wrote his personal physician, Dr. Kenny Fox, now, finally, I am not religious, so that I have no apprehension of a hereafter, either a hope or reward, or a fear of punishment. It is not a matter of belief. It is what I feel to be true from my experience, observation, and simple tissue feeling. Steinbeck received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1962 for the body of his work. And in that Nobel Prize acceptance speech, he wrote, he spoke, we have usurped many of the powers we once ascribed to God. Fearful and unprepared, we have assumed lordship over the life or death of the whole world, of all living things. The danger and the glory and the choice rest finally in man. The test of his perfectibility is at hand. Having taken godlike power, we must seek in ourselves for the responsibility and the wisdom we once prayed some deity might have. Man himself has become our greatest hazard and our only hope, so that today St. John the Apostle may well be paraphrased. In the end is the Word, and the Word is man, and the Word is with man. John Steinbeck, free thinker, born February 27, 1902. Reaching back a little further, on February 28th, in 1533, Michel Iquem de Montaigne was born near Bordeaux in France. His mother's Spanish-Portuguese family had converted from Judaism to Protestantism, I'm sure, under threat of death, and emigrated to France during the Spanish Inquisition. His Roman Catholic father, a well-to-do merchant, came from a titled family. He was taught by his father, then studied law. After serving for 15 years as a petty official, he resigned to commence writing essays. As a matter of fact, the word essay comes from him. The word essay, E-S-S-A-I, in French means an attempt. And this is what his famous essays are, attempts to explain various ideas, conjectures, and probably some of the most interesting and delightful intellectual reading you'll ever come across. I recommend Montaigne's essays to you very highly, including some quips and observation that have really lasted. When I play with my cat, he wrote, who knows whether she isn't amusing herself with me more than I am with her? Okay. Montaigne's observation on religion in essays include, how many things served us yesterday for articles of faith which today are fables to us? Philosophy is doubt, he said. To know much is often the cause of doubting more. Nothing, he wrote again another time, is so firmly believed as what we least know. During the bloody religious wars between the French Catholics and Protestant Huguenots, Montaigne played the role of intermediary between King Henry III and the Huguenot Henry of Navarre. Montaigne was jailed briefly, first by the Protestants, then by the Catholics. And if there'd been any other religions around, they would have probably put him in jail too. He campaigned for the issuance of the Edict of Nantes in 1598 by King Henry IV to restore religious toleration, and of course for preaching, or I should say writing, religious toleration, suggesting religious toleration. Montaigne, nominally a Catholic, found his works put on the Church's notorious index of condemned writings. Love this one. Man is certainly stark mad. He cannot make a flea, and yet he will be making gods by the dozens. And it is setting a high value upon our opinions to roast men and women alive on account of them. Montaigne lived in a time when people were roasted alive. His motto, let me see if I can do this in French properly. Que sais-je? What do I know? He approached everything from the point of view, what do I know? And his essays would always start from the simplest truths which are self-evident and then build, instead of taking some point of view delivered by a religion from on high and then explaining everything in those terms. Montaigne's essays, I recommend them if you were not forced to read them in French 03 in college. I recommend them to you very highly. Thank God I am an atheist, Louis Buñuel wrote. He was born February 22nd in 1900 and one of the most influential filmmakers of the 20th century. His first film was born February 22nd in 1900 and one of the most influential filmmakers of the 20th century. His first film, Un Chien Andalou, an Andalusian dog, in 1929 was so shocking, the one with you've almost seen it 100 times on History Channel and other venues of vintage film where the knife is approaching the eyeball. That's Louis Buñuel. He opened up the concept of film. He opened up the idea of how film could be used. His first feature film was The Golden Age, L'Âge d'Or, which attacked the Spanish church and the middle class, and those were lifelong themes for Buñuel. He had to get out of Spain during the Spanish Civil War. He came to the United States, where he worked at the Museum of Modern Art right here in New York, and also as a film dover for Warner Brothers. He eventually moved to Mexico, where he became a citizen in 1948. Everything he did won awards and prizes, so much so that Generalissimo Franco invited Buñuel back to Spain in 1961. Franco not worrying about the left chasing him out of the office that he had chased the legitimate government out of 20 years before. So Buñuel went back to Spain, and if Franco thought that in his gratitude Buñuel would make some films that would please Franco, the fascist dictator, he was sadly mistaken. Buñuel came back and he made Viridiana, which I recommend to you highly. It's about a novice nun with a lecherous uncle and a charitable streak. Franco's government banned it instantly for blasphemy, even though it won the Golden Palm at the Cannes Film Festival. Buñuel then left Spain again and made a couple of excellent films for which he is also very well known. Journal d'une femme de chambre with Jean Moreau and Catherine Deneuve, and to see those two beauties in the same film is worth the price of admission, believe me. And Belle de Jour in 1967. And
J'ai une idée. Si vous vous appeliez Belle de Jour.
Belle de Jour?
Comme vous ne venez que l'après-midi.
Je veux savoir ton nom.
Belle de Jour.
Pourquoi la nuit tu n'es pas là?
D'où elle sort, celle-là?
Qui? Belle de Jour?
Oui. Elle a des demandes?
Belle de jour? C'est original.
Belle de jour, c'est le drame d'un divorce, celui de l'âme et de la chair. C'est le conflit entre le plus tendre amour et l'exigence implacable des sens.
Veux-tu que je te dise un secret, Séverine? Je t'aime chaque jour davantage.
Moi aussi, Pierre. J'ai l'impression que je te comprends mieux, que je me rapproche de toi. Chaque jour, je t'aime davantage, tu sais.
Je t'ai jamais vu comme ça. Si seulement...
Quoi?
Oh, rien. Si seulement un jour tu m'annonçais une grande nouvelle.
Tu as l'air de te plaire avec moi.
Beaucoup. Mais ça ne suffit pas.
C'est l'autre que tu aimes.
Belle de jour, prise dans l'engrenage, pourra-t-elle vaincre cette force irrésistible qui l'entraîne? Comment revenir de ce voyage sans retour, de cette descente aux enfers?
Ne me touche pas le visage. Ne me touche pas!
Allez, mettez ceci, s'il vous plaît.
Mais enfin, de quoi s'agit-il?
N'ayez aucune appréhension. Vous savez, celles qui vous ont précédé ne demanderaient qu'à revenir.
Mais pourquoi?
Pour de l'argent. Tout bêtement. L'immense majorité des femmes qui se vendent le font hélas pour de l'argent.
Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Comment peut-on descendre aussi bas? Pierre.
En traitant ce sujet brûlant, le prestigieux Luis Buñuel a réalisé son plus beau film.
Je sais qu'un jour il faudra que j'expie pour tout ce que j'ai fait. Mais sans ça, je ne pourrais pas vivre. Après tout, faites ce que vous voulez avec moi.
Moi aussi, il me ferait peur, cet homme-là. Des fois, ça doit être pénible, tout de même.
Qu'est-ce que tu en sais, Pallas?
And finally, that obscure object of desire, which is one of the most popular films on the Netflix library, popular foreign language films in the Netflix library. He died in 1983, and of course, he said, "Thank God, I'm still an atheist." Thank God, I'm still an atheist. And so are we here on this program. This is Atheism in History, I'm John Rafferty. Hope to see you here again next week when we examine people and events of the first week in March in the history of atheism and free thought. Thanks for watching.
Wherever we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation, at least not just. We are also a Jewish nation, a Muslim nation, and a Buddhist nation, and a Hindu nation, and a nation of non-believers.